Hello, everybody. These are exciting times, very exciting times. Amsterdam. Hello, Amsterdam. Yeah, here we are. I'm here in Detroit. My name is John Barnwell, and I've been enjoying my 25 episode conversation with the Reverend David William Parry from Ye Old London. Those schemers over in London, boy, they keeping the world busy with drama. And but it's not David's fault. Oregon. Oh, we'll start getting people from all over the place, I'm sure. That being said, just a few notices. If you're wanting to get information, Devin Nunez said to text the word freedom to 98078. So that can keep you up to steam. And in case things get a little exciting, everybody should remain calm because ultimately I strongly feel good things are up ahead. And some of the things that I said to Douglas Gabriel on American Intelligence Media are going to come to fruition by the end of the month. And it should be exciting because it will be a movement towards truth and a movement towards freedom and a movement towards maintaining our liberty as sovereign individuals. And not to be misunderstood when people start throwing around words like nationalism. The nationalism that's going on at this time isn't about the struggle of all the nation states against each other. It has to do with that there's a contract here in America that we have that recognizes that we have this sovereign divine right of freedom that's been given to us. And so consequently, what we have to do is we have to be good custodians of it. And that's proven to be true for a long, long time. And given the fact that if everybody's so upset about America, why are all these people trying to come here? And yes, it will continue. The change that everybody thinks is going to happen is not going to be what they expect. And so consequently, all the recent developments I don't want to get into here, you can keep yourself informed by going to patriotsfortruth.org or aimfortruth.org or americansforinnovation.blogspot.com. Remembering all those things is an old gent like me. And anyways, we're here with the Reverend David William Parry, who I have the honor of being cyber friends with in this intergalactic cyber conflict that's going on. And I don't mean to make light of it, but isn't that what's going on? That we're experiencing growth pains as we make another transition. And we made many in the past, and I hope that it could be a smooth transition. But with David, he is the author of a Shakespearean study, and it's a marvelous book, The Grammar of Witchcraft. No, it's not a study of witchcraft, as I always say, and is inspired Shakespearean-esque poetry, Caliban's Redemption. And as a celebrated author, he also has Mount Athos Inside Me, Essays on Religion, Swedenborg and the Arts, that's edited by Daniela Irendust, and who's a very talented young fellow over in London. And David, I just couldn't help but notice what a wonderful interview you did with our friend Lowell Gallen out of Jerusalem. That was marvelous. I mean, geez, I learned. I thought I knew you, and every time we turn a corner, I find out more intriguing information about you. You're quite a universally human individual, and I guess that's what I want to talk about today is the concept of the universally human, because we've had so many different conflicts based on the variations of the individual folk souls, and the representative of that which is universally human, that transcends all of these folk souls that dwell within the realm of the archangel. We have to be able to maintain our freedom through the way in which we cultivate our thoughts, and that we think with our heads, but we see the darkness or the light of a thought with our hearts. And so it has to do with incorporating the heart into one's thinking. That's the means by which one can translate oneself above the realm of the limitations of the folk souls. And the folk souls greatly understood, because people seem to try and interpret it as like this some kind of a racial thing, or even a nation thing. And it's really more of a geographical attribute, and that the different regions of the world, according to spiritual science, manifest different qualities within the realm of the archangelic intervention into human nature through the folk souls, the beings of language, so to speak. And so, consequently, as we're exposed to these influences from our different regions, were we to just fall in line with that, it could become problematic. In Italy, uh, taking recourse in the sentient soul, in France, taking recourse into the intellectual soul, in England, taking recourse to the consciousness soul, which wants to see the world as a big uh, economic venture, a big corporation. And then, of course, in Central Europe, you have the whole idea of the heart region of the individual that was manifested by people, great individuals like Goethe and Lessing and Herder and Novalis, but they've kind of gone by the wayside. And so Central Europe isn't what it used to be in many regards. And if we could find something of that is about being human, that is that warmth region in the heart, because it was St. John the Divine who said that there's a still small voice in the heart. That's the voice of conscience. And so that's, I think, my rudder. I try to make it my rudder at least. And in my strivings, I frequently don my fool's cap. But nonetheless, I try as I do. And David's books, by the way, are available on Amazon.com. And might as well finish this book part. My books, my first book is The Arcana of the Grail Angel, the Spiritual Science of the Holy Blood and of the Holy Grail, the study developed out of the work of Rudolf Steiner of the underground streams of esoteric Christianity, which flowed from the Brotherhood of the Holy Grail to the Order of the Knights Templar and the True Rosicrucian Order. That's some 640 pages. And the sequel to that is The Arcana of Light on the Path. It's a meditative study based on Mabel Collins' Light on the Path. They both have a very extensive series of cosmological diagrams that can help you understand the work of Rudolf Steiner and some of the conversations that we have here. And so, that being said, my books are available from me directly on eBay. If you're outside of the country, you can always contact me through my academia link that's posted below, or through Facebook if they're still going to be there in a month or so, who knows. But nonetheless, we're all rolling along here. So let's see, what else is there? Well, let's just welcome the Reverend David Parry from London, and we'll see what comes up. Hi, David.
My dear friend, salutations to you.
You got to get that mute.
I'm not meant to be on mute.
You're still muted there, David.
No.
Why am I not hearing you? Oh, I had my headset muted. I was the only one not hearing. So again, hi.
John, I'm not that bad. I know I'm the worst techie in the country. I'm not that bad. Oh gosh, I'm trying to work out what you mean about what I said on Lowell's show. I regard you as a good friend nowadays, so I'm not sure what I would have said that came as some sort of revelation. My recollection doesn't go in that direction. I mean, maybe the secret of that show was that very morning I'd been to my mother's funeral with my brother, which is, never easy. But as I think I said on Lowell's show, I mean, I'm old school, and that was a commitment that was made before my mother's somewhat unexpected passing. Excuse me. So yeah, I can't quite work out what I'd have said. And yeah, I'm determined, I suppose, to take a back seat about events in America, because I hate discussing, forgive me, foreign affairs. It is and it isn't, because as I say before, I've got a great deal to say about British affairs, but I never know, I never know the ins and outs of it all the minute you get past the channel. I was rather taken aback at the QAnon shaman, the Buffalo Bill, in his new incarnation. I must admit, thinking I would pay good money to have had a couple of photographs like that. I mean, that was good. I mean, also, I don't think he knows much about shamanism. He might know a lot about westerns and cowboys and Indians, if you're still allowed to say that, because it looked to me like some sort of 1930s, costume that some exec in a film studio would have said, look, that's what Indian medicine men wear. Go and wear something like that. And I love the sort of gradation of paint across his face. That's the theatrical in me coming out, as opposed to the minister. I noticed the red, white, and blue across the face, done rather tastefully, I felt. But I couldn't see him. And is it these glasses or these old eyes? Everybody was arguing about what the various other runes were engraved around his body, and I couldn't see. Every time I got an image, somebody said that's the hammer and sickle. Well, I couldn't see it. Then somebody else said it's the eagle. It's the eagle. He's a patriot. I couldn't see the eagle either. So I'm just a bemused foreigner in all of this. One thing does depress me about the whole situation. It's how extreme things get, how polarized things get so quickly nowadays. I mean, it was remember, I'm only talking about the representation of those events in the British press, so I can't say much more than that. 1 minute it was a few people letting off steam. The next minute, it was tantamount to a full-scale coup d'etat. Then everybody's claiming it's everybody else's coup d'etat. And then all these casualties start, which of course is terrible. And so I'm just gobsmacked to the whole thing, and I don't know what to say. The only thing I did enjoy was that slightly aging gentleman with his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. I thought that was hilariously funny, only because that type of lady is bound to have a breakdown about that sort of thing. She presents herself as a statesperson, a stateswoman, but love, you know, if you're going to do that, you've got to live up to it. You've got to live up to it. You know, you can't just say it and then expect everybody to go along with it. So, I mean, but apart from that, I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. I just hope Americans remember that the Constitution is something that people in Europe, a lot of blood and a lot of sweat in this part of the world is still expended on trying to get them all here. You know, to the shame of this country, this mother of democracies. There's no real written constitution here to date. Some people think things like Magna Carta and all the rest are still on the statute books. The people in the know tend to say, well, actually, they're not. You know, with the passing of the centuries, Magna Carta and the rest all fell away from the statute books. And really, the only thing that counts as a written constitution nowadays was written with the defeat of the king way back, as he was then led away to the gallows, of course. There's another story. You know, Parliament is sovereign, 3 words. And then we rely on Hansard, which, of course, is the recording of the various debates that take place in Parliament. Apart from that, there doesn't really seem to be one. I mean, the great treasure of American life, it strikes this old minister is the, you know, the fact you've got a written constitution and a great deal of effort and pain and suffering went into the production of that. And I just wish European nations had such a similar treasure. More than that, I don't know what to say to you, John. I find the whole thing really distressing. You know, in one of the most advanced countries, if not the most advanced country in the world, where your passions run high, but there's also such a thing as reason. You know, oh gosh, you know, the Mayflower and all that sort of stuff, the Pilgrim Fathers, I mean, they could be old goats when it came down to it. But at the same time, they believed in the new Atlantis, a better world, you know, and the fact that America was becoming, at least promised to be that better world. I see no good from America attacking itself and falling into these divisions. It seems to be a global phenomena at the moment, which is very, very sad and very upsetting. In Britain, to be honest, you sort of expect it. You know, century in and century out, somebody's trying to do something obnoxious. But, you know, as I say, here you don't get used to it, but you sort of put up with it. Whereas in the States, you know, I don't know, perhaps that's me thinking of Yankee Doodle Dandy. And as I was saying, you know, last week, you know, people dancing down the president's stairway, you know, president's staircase, and all those wonderful Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movies. You know, you tend to think, oh, America's come such a long way. You know, surely we don't need all this. But that's just me. I'll hand it back to you, John, because at the moment I don't know what to say because I'm not sure what you're referring to on Lowell's show. I hope he was happy. I mean, I was so gobsmacked. As I said, I don't like letting people down. And my mother would have said, "Don't let people down, David." So I didn't. But I sort of was shell shocked after the whole thing. So I'm not actually sure what I said. I'll pass back to you.
Well, you were just very genuine. You know, I mean, your authenticity is palpable, shall we say, and it defies the stratifications of British society usually found. And I guess that's what we're talking about here, is this whole delineation of elites and everybody else. And there's a whole world system that's been in development for quite some time, leads back to the Pilgrim Society in 1902 that you can go look up over at America's Renovation or Aim for Truth or any of our websites and find all kinds of information leading back to this event. A Parliament of the Press, the first Imperial Press Conference in 1909. This is one of the original copies, and it's got a preface by the Earl of Rusbury, who's confusing to some people because he's Scottish, and yet he's a Rothschild by marriage. And a lot of the things that the Rothschilds get blamed for do center around that individual and Henry de Worms, who was of Rothschild blood on both sides, but he decided to quit being Jewish and he became Anglican. So a lot of the difficulties that the Jewish people have experienced because of the accusations regarding the Rothschilds lead back to these two individuals, which is very a strange state of affairs, but it's that whole way of dealing with things that the British love to call the great game. And so consequently, what they do is they develop these Punch and Judy shows. You got these sock puppets that are doing your biddings for you. And then you go, what, me? I didn't do anything. I just had my hand in the sock puppet. That's all. And so, like, for example, the Leonardo stuff through Italy. Well, Leonardo's just a division of Eurotech, as was discovered through the research of my associate over at Americans for Innovation, Michael. And it only took a matter of minutes to figure that out. And with the same names showing up, and you end up with Lord Mark Malloch Brown and Sir Geoffrey Patty and George Soros. So anyways, a lot of that's going to come to a wonderful revelation over the next few weeks, not even a few weeks, I believe. And but if you look at what's going on with all the people that are getting shut down, including our current sitting president, it's a lot of guts to do that. And so that, yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Yes, David. As far as the guy with the buffalo, Indian buffalo hat, I thought he was one of the village people. I was waiting for him to break into YMCA, apparently, both he and the guy with his feet up on the desk have been arrested. I just found out from the sidebar here. But who knows what actually went on there. I mean, I've seen all the video and all that, and I could see, the whole event that happened at the door, and it seemed to me that was like in a movie more than in real life. So I really wonder what, if anything, really happened there. I'm going to say I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, and I like it that way at times, because you need to be able to find peace in this world of appearances. And there's people out there that definitely don't want us to know what they've been up to. But just so you know, during that event, certain people were able to capture Nancy Pelosi's laptop and the laptops of other people in Congress who ran out of there like chickens with their heads cut off. And so I guess a lot will come forward regarding the content of those laptops. I'll just leave it there and move on. But yeah, a lot of fishy things going on. Yeah, well, that goes without saying. I mean, really, this is like, you couldn't make this stuff up, because if you did make this stuff up and you told somebody, they go, you can't do that. Nobody believe it. This is like one of those, you're reading a novel and you go, I just can't read this anymore. It's not realistic. This would never happen. And so we're living in a this would never happen novel. And it's pretty easy to get lost in the shuffle. But I do want to recommend to people, I prepared myself a while ago, but to have at least a couple weeks worth of food in case there's disruptions, crazy stuff. And keep your gas tank full of gas. That being said, I have to take a sip and clear my throat.
Gosh, it's sort of the same over here, John, but for different reasons. I mean, I'm beginning to find this global takeover bid. I blame the corporations. A little see-through, but is it just me? I'm beginning to think David Icke, all is forgiven. I don't want to go along the route of sort of lizard people and what have you, but and who knows? Who knows? I mean, I always thought the Queen Mother looked a bit leathery, so who knows? I mean, I find it difficult to believe. And that was the last Queen of England. I'm sorry. The present one is a pro. She's a pro and she knows what to do. Apparently, I met her once years back. She's always on time. If she ever needs a toilet break, she motions with her handbag. And so everybody knows where they stand, and she leaves exactly when she's got to leave. That's what you call a pro. Whereas the Queen Mother, it's a businesswoman. The Queen Mother was the last proper Queen of England. She'd throw fits, she'd get moody, and if Parliament upset her, she'd go to bed for 2 weeks. That's what you call a sovereign. That's a queen. And I knew people who worked at Clarence House, most of which were gay, because she felt LGBT people could serve breakfast properly. And there's one story I've loved to this day where basically a spat broke out between two of the gay boys. Remember, if anyone finds offence at that, so am I, so am I. Two of the gay boys on one of the imperial staircases where they got the rota muddled and about taking the Queen her royal boiled egg and toast. And so this spat broke out. Sorry, it's my turn. No, it's not. It's mine. To which she came out on the staircase above them both and said, "Look, there's one queen who's waiting for her breakfast." So you get to hear wonderful things like that. But I don't know. I'm so sanguine over the monarchy. I mean, I quite like the idea of a non-politicized embodiment of a constitution. And if that's what we had, I suppose I'd be a bit more of a royalist. I mean, I'm not. Let's get the whole thing into the 21st century. And why do we need a monarch? Why do we need a monarch? I don't know who I'd vote for president because they're all equally obnoxious. But at least you can sack them or something, whereas you can't do it with a sovereign. No, I mean, I'm not one of the great royalists of the country, and if somebody offered me the crown, I'd probably give it to somebody else. I don't know what we do with it all, apart from modernize and think deeply. And is there any communal benefit to it, which I can't really see. Every time the disestablishment of the Queen comes up, that's on its way. That's on its way. Certainly, when this Queen goes, this is the secret of why she's holding on so long. She doesn't know what will happen to the monarchy when she's gone. And I will be one of the people gunning for Charles III. He wouldn't dare say Charles III because the gags would be non-stop. So you think you're like Charles I and Charles II, so that he wouldn't be able to show his face in public. But I suspect that's why she's holding on, because the minute she can't abdicate, because if she ever did, people like me are instantly going to say, "Why do we need a monarchy anyway? Let's get rid of the whole thing." So that's why she's holding on. And Charles, I think he's turning bitter. Have you noticed? Sometimes she takes him like the schoolboy to opening events, and he sort of grimaces at her side, looking bitter. So I suppose he's been in the wings so long, he's getting fed up with it. But sorry, it's her turn, not yours. So yeah, I mean that's royalty, and that's me. David Icke and lizards, I don't know, maybe because he predicted this lockdown years ago, and it's finally happened, which I can't believe. Handing back to you, John.
Well, David Icke is a remarkable individual. That goes without saying. And a great many of the things that he predicted have come to pass. As far as the whole lizard thing, I don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities, but the tendency to have an image of lizardine nature, shall we call it, is looking into the realm of Ahriman, who is our imperial lizard on Earth here, and that is that realm of subnature, the realm of the spider being itself, that's attempting to weave us into a uber material web, to where we just become components in a great circuit board called Earth. And no, thank you. I'll stick with the human destiny myself. Maybe at my peril. I really don't care. I think that that's why we're here. We're supposed to go through all this stuff. And the thing that one has to do is, again, I keep reiterating the words of Rudolf Steiner, in that we push back Lucifer by humility, and we push back the realm of Ahriman by being able to be satisfied in your current state, whatever that may be. It may not be very good, but that equanimity of spirit pushes back this unwholesome spirit of Ahriman, who wants us to keep continually feeding the hunger, so to speak. And that's that realm of commerce. That's kind of a level of affliction that the city of London typifies. It's just straight up mammon. It's like your qualifications depend upon your pocketbook. And if you got a lot of money, you got a good chance of receiving some kind of a title. It's like, well, a title. Well, here in America, a title. I got a title on my car. It's like some kind of corporate document, and so it's that corporatism really that leads back through London, back to Amsterdam. All corporations are registered through Amsterdam, and they get paid for every single corporation. And then you get this character, Old Joe, here in America. He's a senator from Delaware. Well, that's most of the corporations in the U.S. are Delaware corporations. It's almost like an offshore entity, Delaware. If you ask somebody that lives here in the U.S. to name all 50 states, I bet you they forget to mention Delaware. Nobody ever goes there. And I have said before, if you even cross the border into Delaware with plates from another state, you'll get pulled over and they'll give you a ticket because they get so little traffic in there. So it's one of those places. It's just highly, highly unusual. It's kind of like the Cayman Islands of the landmass of the United States. That being said, so that speaks volumes as far as how he's always in the middle of all these kind of dealings, business dealings, and getting to skim on and on, whatever. So we'll have none of that here. And then you get to Rome, their little role in these modern events with Leonardo, and allegedly it was their satellite. But again, Leonardo's a subsidiary of Eurotech, which is very much tied into the whole nexus of the IBM Eclipse Foundation and their theft of social media, and the whole weird group of these social media companies that are all riding on the invention of Michael McKibben's Leader Technology, and that they built their whole future on him without ever paying him a dime. So that's where that's at. But then if you get into Rome itself, remember Rome in 869 AD said that the human being doesn't have a spirit, that the human being is body and soul. He could have certain spiritual qualities, but that there was not an individual human spirit, and that if an individual wants to come to the spirit, he has to come to the church and receive it from the clerics, which is kind of an unusual state of affairs, but that's the way they looked at it. And it was carried further in 1869. So you have 869, and you have come to 1869, and they bring it a stage further in its development through the proclamations made at that council of the church. And so you see that they're trying to prevent you from having an independent relationship in the spiritual world. That's their mission. Whereas the shadow image of Americanism is that they want to obliterate altogether the soul and the spirit, and have you just become some kind of an automaton. And so that's not what we're fighting for here. We're not trying to bring that about. That's not what the American people are about. Although, leading back to key figures like Woodrow Wilson and characters like that, they represent that kind of demonic side of Americanism that's extremely unwholesome. And so it's not easy to think these things through. And in fact, to be honest, I tried sharing this this morning, and I went to some of the various groups, Rudolf Steiner groups, and I found that I couldn't share this there because I got into a bit of a toss-up with some people that are anthroposophists, and they tend to fall for terminology. And I got into some agreement with some significant people. And Rudolf Steiner had once cautioned about conversation. He said, in talking about these sorts of things, he says that if you speak the truth to people, you'll make them angry. And I think he's right. It tends to piss people off if your version of truth doesn't line up with their version. They get angry. And I don't know. I feel a little different about it. I think that I'll just wait and see if it proves true, like your friend David Icke and his whole idea of lizards. As far as I could tell, I think that it's his burgeoning etheric clairvoyance that brings him into the ability to be able to perceive the Ahrimanic double, which is something that is quite a foreboding presence. And of course, we all have to deal with the idea of the double, both a Luciferic double and an Ahrimanic double. Lucifer wanting us to dissolve this whole program and have us be ghosts, whereas Ahriman would like to capture us in the singularity, the digital singularity. And so, but like I said, both of those, that's not my idea of a good time. And so I'm going to keep moving forward in the human realm and stumble along and make all kinds of mistakes. As far as your LGBTQ, I run out of understanding what all those letters means and all that, but whatever all that is. I was criticized for this podcast by somebody because they thought that was an evil thing to do. And I think back to the founding of America, and I think back to the aide-de-camp of George Washington. And it was a fascinating character that wrote the rule book for the U.S. Army. And it was a General von Steuben. He was a Prussian general, and he was gay. And Washington didn't care. Of course, Washington comes from some of the elite houses of Britain, and so they're kind of used to that kind of thing. Everybody has a poofter for a cousin, it's not an unusual thing. And it's not my job to stand in judgment of anybody, whatever their path in life is, or whatever their religion is, whatever. That's not my job. That's between them and their creator. And that's one of the sacred trusts in America. So if somebody has a problem with that, okay, fine, go have a problem with it. And but I'm just going to keep rolling along and do what I do, and it's not for me to judge. And personally, when I see people working together harmonious, I think it's a good thing. And so I just happen to think that they have a tendency to work more out of their etheric body. And the polarity, the physical body of a man is male, his etheric body is female. In a woman, it's vice versa, so that her physical body is female. Therefore, her etheric body, the body of life and growth, is male. So it's the creative principle. So you see that out of the etheric body, woman is able to give birth as they're actually creator beings. Something comes forth from them, whether or not they're that intentionally involved in the process. It's that principle. So that's how it's to be understood. And so it's not up to me to decide how that's all supposed to sort out. And I've got along with poofters, yeah, as poofs, as TEDx Lambeth calls them. I get along with all the different kinds. I used to. It's kind of unsettling to people because, like I've always said, I have had good friends everywhere from bikers to bankers. And so it's like I basically try to just get along with everybody. But maybe that's a flaw. I don't know. I think not. That being said, so here we are, and we're all trying to just keep this all glued together. And I try to be somewhat of an uplifting influence. And by the way, I do want to offer my condolences to your dear mother. I think she's the lucky one in that she gets to meet some of these episodes for being down here. And being up there probably at this time would be an interesting show, I think. And I'm sure she was a God-fearing, God-loving, human-loving individual. From all you shared, she seems like she was a real remarkable. I think that's some of the more unique stuff that you shared on Lowell's show is when you talked about your mother, your dear mother, and so that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, my mother was very special too. She was like the mother for the neighborhood, and it's interesting because she was a moody Libra, but she loved having the kids in the house because then she knew where I was. See, I wasn't off somewhere getting into trouble. I was down in the basement playing rock and roll or something thereof. But in any event, I think that in trying to come to a deeper understanding of the current events is not easy because there's so much flying around. So that rather than try to address it here because everybody's agreeing to disagree regarding all the details of said events, I think that what we could say is that we're just here striving to find a context in which to place these things that ends up in a wholesome result. And I hope that's what we're doing here. And that's why we tend to focus on the cultural ramifications, art, music, theater, the visual arts, and architecture, anything that comes to mind. And it's kind of the free flow here, and hope that we can stimulate people to try and find inspiration within the realm of the arts. Because I tend to agree with Schopenhauer, who thought that the arts were higher than philosophy. And as we discussed Schopenhauer previously, I won't get into it right now, although it would be fun to delve in that a little bit further because he's become so significant in a quiet way because nobody ever talks about him. But yet, if you look at the way in which people approach things, it's as if he's pervasive. I mean, he's all over the place. The world as will, And by the way, David, you were somewhat criticizing my connecting him to Indian philosophy, but he earlier than one might think because he had people that were feeding him texts of the Upanishads, or I guess you'd call them Upanishads, but it's Upanishads. And in the Upanishads is some of the kind of more esoteric writings of ancient India, where they were able to receive revelation directly from the world of spirit through the regulation of breath. But that's something that's suitable for them. That's not suitable for us here in the West, according to spiritual science. Although I did study that extensively when I was a young man. I studied Kundalini Yoga with the Sikhs, and it definitely works. But what is the result? So we have to find our own path in this world. And there's, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I've traveled down so many different ones. So I have opinions on just about everything out there. And whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been free to pursue whatever they are. And that's what's at stake today. And that's why I'm concerned, but that's also why I'm confident, because I expect better from the American people, and I think that I'm going to be happy with the result. It's going to take some time, but I think that it's all going to shake out. I just wish that certain individuals outside the country would quit trying to manipulate what's going on here. The problem is that there's so much power based here in the U.S. that it's viewed by the elites in Britain as that they're the smart ones that know what to do, and we're the ones that have the resources and the money to be able to do it with. And so that's my rub. And I think that that's something that comes straight out of the perspective of their particular intelligence community and Privy Council. And I choose to disagree. And that's okay. I think we got some pretty smart people here, but I think that we're a little bit too caught up in the pseudo culture that's been created through the agency of those mass media organizations that lead back to the imperial press conference of 1909 in London. And so enough Cecil Rhodes already. He tried, it didn't work. Okay. Sorry, Cecil, but you're not going to be able to succeed in your plans of world domination through the extension of British Empire. And that's just the way it goes. No man's father except your heavenly Father. That's a nice thought. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes even I run out of things to say. I'm just like everybody else. I'm just sitting here waiting with bated breath. I just hope that I can inspire some people to have courage, because it's a heart force, and what's going to lead us through these challenging times is the forces of the heart. If you just get stuck into the head, what you do is you end up reflecting the fear realm of the kidneys, Husaba, as it's called in the Old Testament. And he pierced him in his loins. You'll look up the pierced in his reins. Reins is the word that they translate in the Old Testament. That means the kidneys, and there's that dualism in the kidneys and the fear process that bounces back and forth between the fear process of the kidneys and the lungs, and the process of anger and rage in the liver. And so we have to rise above. We have to be able to bring that energy up into a more conscious relationship to the heart. And that's what creates inner warmth. Rudolf Steiner describes this, and he talks about how people that just look at things and they're not attentive enough to be able to look deeply into the things that they're seeing. They don't generate warmth from their perception, which is an interesting concept. And so that if you look at somebody who's extremely observant, like I could tell a story about Goethe, this one, if you get into the fascinating collection of works by his Conversations with Eckermann, it's usually published in English, but Eckermann was his secretary. And I had the good fortune of being very dear friends with one of the last members of that family. In fact, he was the one who financed my second book. And but the Eckermann family is a fascinating group of people. In the Conversation with Eckermann, he talks about a story where an individual was all excited because he got to meet with Goethe and some of his scientific friends, and so he was brought into the room, and Goethe was sitting at a table, and there was a big rock in the center of the table, and there was a group of them sitting around, and they had bottles of wine in front of them and a glass, and they were just gazing at the rock. And he sat in there for about 5 minutes, and then he was shown out of the room, and that was his great lesson in life, was that they were gazing at this rock, and that's what we're looking at here. Can you look at things more deeply? Can you penetrate? And that's why, like when Goethe came to the idea of the Urpflanze, or the archetypal plant, he explained it to Friedrich Schiller, and Schiller says, yeah, but that's just something, you made up in your head. He says, no, but I see it. And so you see that Goethe is our representative of exactly what Rudolf Steiner was talking about, being able to look at things more deeply. And it has to do, to a large extent, with allowing yourself to be at the beginning of something. Because if you can allow the beginning, you can allow an unfoldment, that you allow this riddle to live in you, that maybe, just maybe, you don't know everything about this. And so you continue to look at it, and you try to see if there's more to be learned from whatever it is. And that is a real key, I think, to unlocking those forces of warmth in the heart, because you overcome the arrogance, again, of Lucifer and Ahriman in caring for other people, in being able to be engaged, to have something that is connecting to an individual, taking interest in other people, rather than being aloof, disinterested, the typical countenance that's the caricature of the elites, that the deference, and to be able to truly involve yourself with the other. And of course, one of the greatest examples in history is Bernard of Clairvaux. And if you look into the story of Bernard of Clairvaux, he did more healings than Jesus Christ. People don't know. People have lost track of a lot of these things, but he healed blind people. He healed all manner of illnesses. And Rudolf Steiner said, of course, we couldn't really do that today because our soul configuration isn't the same, but that he had this actual power of being able to do these things because of the way he developed his relationship to Christ, and also that he was the person most responsible in the Middle Ages for elevating the Mother Mary to veneration. It's not to be mistaken that people worship the Virgin Mary. It's not a worship of the Virgin Mary. She's a mediatrix. She can intercede on behalf of her Son, is the concept that and so you have the wonderful sermons of Bernard of Clairvaux on the Song of Songs, of all things. What an unusual topic, but yet what is going on with Solomon, the Book of Solomon, the Song of Songs, and what is that? What it has to do with that there is the reconciliation of the idea of Adam and Eve, and the reconciliation of Cain and Abel, and the mystery of the Knights Templar, that he was the original sponsor of the Knights Templar. And so all this dark stuff that people try to attend to the Knights Templar is just stuff that came on later, because remember, the dark forces always want to take over the best things, right? The Templars started the banking system. Well, I don't think current day bankers have anything in common with the Knights Templar. That being said, so I don't know, David, I'm just rambling on and on. I'm just trying to find the lighter side of life.
The lighter side of life is everywhere. The lighter side of life is everywhere. I remember saying one thing on Lowell's show, which I've thought forever. You know, there are two attitudes towards life. Either you pull a Poe face towards it, you know, somebody's serious face, or you have a more jovial human face. The substances of life are serious because of what they are. They don't need people pulling faces at them. You know, just be yourself, enjoy. Yeah, I'm a self-confessed short, fat, puff pastor. I'm very happy and comfortable with that. And shame on people who aren't. It's not spiritual discernment. It's called bigoted prejudice. As simple as that. And don't quote scripture at me. We all know the arguments. And if you don't know the arguments, go and find them out. Scripture does not say lots of things that people want it to say. Our good Lord said nothing about it. And maybe you don't get the whole picture in English, particularly with some of these awful new translations. I mean, the words, there are only two words in Greek that really, I mean, one of my master's essays was, you know, how many times is homosexuality mentioned in the Bible? I worked out about 5. Somebody told me 7 recently. So there are more references to how a man trims his beard. So it wasn't exactly the burning issue of the day, was it? You know, Sodom and Gomorrah is a very traditional Middle Eastern hospitality tale. And let's look at that in a bit more depth. So the patriarch offers his daughters to a raging mob. You know, anybody that thinks that's acceptable may have lost the gist of the story. You know, maybe we need to take a few steps back and think, what are the ancients trying to get at there? Maybe it's not what it seems to be. Certainly some of the translations openly say homosexual, which it simply cannot have said in the past. The word didn't exist, and neither did the concept. So you're looking at prejudice and bigotry from much later centuries. Shame on whoever said that. Judge not lest ye be judged. Pull the beam out of your own eye, and all the rest of it. The Bible Belt will never discuss things with me. They either ignore me, 98% is ignoring, or they pretend I'm not there, but they'll never discuss because they simply want to keep a prejudicial view of a problem that simply cannot have existed before recently. I have a great deal to say about it in my new book. Do you know, I hate talking about the LGBT thing for 2 reasons. I don't bloody know what half the letters mean nowadays. Why does the modern generation have to add letters to everything? What a Soviet turn of mind? You know, everything has to be written down, you know, hook, line and sinker. You get to the end of a paragraph thinking, what on earth are they talking about? You know, this means this and that means that. And if you get the two together, it means something else. Oh, shut up, shut up, shut up. You know, the meaning disappears. The meaning of what you're getting at disappears. I'm more concerned in trying to understand my maker and trying to live the injunctions that we were given. Am I trying to lead a loving life and a wise life in fear and awe of the Creator? Yes. And that is nobody else's business. Worry about your own business, whoever said that. Maybe you're closer to the flames than you think. Ha! Yeah, I wish they would discuss it with me, actually. I've got this ridiculous Hegelian view. I'm beginning to see much more in him. I had a thing about Hegel years ago. You know, the world's brightest Lutheran. But I mean, he let himself down repeatedly, admittedly, by saying the system could be used outside of Christianity. I'm not sure it can be. And even if it can be, does that really mean it's not Christian, or are you christening another system? Schopenhauer's just staggering, but those two seem to be opposites to each other. They seem to be the yes and no to each other. And certainly no, I'd never dream of saying, correcting you on either Hindu mysticism, John, or Schopenhauer. Certainly extracts of Eastern materials were coming through at that particular time, which of course means reams. It doesn't mean one or two jots and tittles, it means reams. But what I was getting at, I can't remember where I said it recently, was the fact that whole books hadn't really been collected at that time, and the ones that had been, as far as I know, were far from complete. But I know Schopenhauer had copies of some of the sacred books, books of the East, by his bed when he was an old man, so I know that. And I mean, he felt certainly that the Kantian Schopenhauerian tradition, what a mouthful, only a German would come up with it. So he felt that it had linked the West back in with the deep and ageless wisdom of India. Yes, of course it has. Yeah, wonderful. But I don't know. I just like the sort of bouncy Hegel. The ultimate schoolmaster, the professor that looks down his nose at everything, and you're always in the wrong, and you'll never get a grade A. I just like that sort of thing, and the fact he did know all that stuff, and not every single page of his books is impossible to read. The Hegelian mysticism intrigues me. So if that's where Lutherans are going, spot on. That's really quite interesting. My own background, I suppose, if I'm completely honest, I mean, my dear mother was an Anglican, which, of course, like most other Anglicans, means she never went to church. She knew it was there, but busy. So my stepfather was a Roman Catholic from Northern Ireland. Now there's a story. If people think that prejudice against Roman Catholics died out in Northern Ireland, my God, I remember some of the stories which were terrifying beyond belief. I mean, he had a career in the Royal Navy, the British Navy, because there was no other employment for a young Irish lad. My God, that's in the past century. That's in our time. Isn't that unbelievable? Prejudice comes in all shapes and forms, and I just wish we could get tired of it. I wish we could get tired of being prejudiced and more concerned about compassion and grace and charity and living in awe of the Lord, in fear and trembling, because that's what we're asked to do, not cast judgment or aspersions on other people. That's not anybody's business. Gosh, there was something else. I don't know. I'll hand back to you, John, because I'm on the verge of saying too much, I think. Certainly in terms of scripture, let me just say one thing. We've all got to remember these endlessly complex and wonderful materials which are divinely inspired. I've no doubt they weren't written in English to begin with. We've got to remember that. And the sorts of Greek and the sorts of Aramaic and the sorts of Hebrew foxed people, and still do in translations. It's not easy. Am I obscuring that fact? No, I'm saying what any team of translators would say, because you're looking at language slippage over time, you're looking at cultural slippage, conceptual slippage. And I used to like Chuck Missler. I bet that will come as a shock to the Bible Belt listeners. What an extraordinary man that was. I remember the one time he was with another of a group of evangelicals on some sort of TV show, and he said he'd taught Sodom and Gomorrah, endless times in Bible study, and he got to the stage where he realized that that's between the individual and their creator. Now, I actually think you can say a lot more than that, but what a sensitive and learned soul that man was. Very wrong about certain things. I felt his weaknesses were on moral theology, which is, of course, what actually I studied at university. But oh yeah. So you're wrong on a significant thing, but you're right about so much. And the fact his qualifications weren't in theology, I mean, as far as I remember, wasn't it computer science? Wasn't it computer science or engineering? You know, I mean, the way he speaks, it's with authority, it's with learning. He struggled with the Bible every single day of his life. You could tell it. And, you know, that's a man that needs to be emulated. I don't think he'd have ever said a judgmental word to anybody, because that's the good Protestant value of keeping yourself to yourself and not judging. I mean, certainly, as I was saying, my own background, uh, family background, tends to be Anglican, and it tends to be Roman Catholic. By personal preference, my own background, there's a long story in itself, was actually Unitarian, and or Congregationalist. I mean, I had my own church many years ago in Shadwell in East London. If anybody thinks that's an easy gig, they ought to go to East London to this day. I mean, Everdale and Covenanter, I was the minister there in my own little church for a couple of years. We used to get visited frequently by the inner city firm, which was one of the armies of football thugs that used to patrol that particular area. We all had them singing Christmas carols. You know, they were very, very respectful to all of us, and the fact I was a pub pastor. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think what a waste of time for Christians to keep attacking each other when there's a world to redeem and there's a world to witness in. You know, can't we all stop this nonsense and do what we're meant to do? Evangelize the nations, stand by the scripture, and try and find the good in all things. I wish we could do that, because maybe the world would get the lift up it needs, as opposed to the very source and focus of goodness constantly being in one huge rout. Now, I will hand back to you, because I think I need a sip of water. Anyway, I dare say some comments have come up. Handing back to you, John.
Well, the philosophy of puffdom. I don't know. I say live and let live, and if that works for you, that's between you and God. That's about all I'm going to say about it. But I think as far as the actual American take on it, I think that George Washington is as good a source as any, and he didn't have a problem with General von Steuben organizing the Continental Army. By the way, had it not been for General von Steuben organizing the army, we probably wouldn't have defeated the Brits. That's by the way. You have to keep that in mind. And not that the king ever surrendered, nor the banks, and that's the problem we're in right now. That's a big sore spot for people that actually know what's going on here, leading back to the Organic Act of 1871. You can even look that up on Wikipedia, but that was the incorporation. And there's various levels of receivership that the country's gotten into as a result of the escapades of certain characters within our shores. And one of the biggest, most recent being during FDR, who tends to get lionized, but he's in my mind has a very checkered past, in that he knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen, and he let it happen because he wanted to get into the war. I mean, that the only guy who hasn't started a war that was the president of this country is the guy that we have right now. He's the only one in my lifetime. I mean, think of that. That's like crazy, but that's ultimately the reality. The Catholic Church, yeah, well, you know, they tend to find their way through intelligence services. So if you look at the early history of the OSS and the CIA, you look who's in there, and you see that there's a great deal of entanglement with the interface between Jesuit universities and the Anglican-rooted universities in the U.S., specifically Yale, but you also have, there's a lot of history there regarding the Jesuit order. And, you know, if you look at it further, like for example, some people tend to lionize Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, okay? And he was a paleontologist, and he had some interesting concepts regarding what ultimately developed into the Gaia movement. But if you really know anything about his history, you realize that he played a big role in installing Mao Zedong. So, you know, that kind of tarnishes his mitre, so to speak. So they're always in the mix somewhere with intrigue, and it's about power and control. And I'm just at this point I'm tedious. It's tedious to me to continually having to confront some of these things, you know, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm more interested in the cultural, the uplifting artistic impulses, but I keep getting pulled into this whole scenario of Hegelian politics, you know, and but that's the realm in which the lodges of the West they that's the way they function. They're using the Hegelian dialectic as a means for the acquisition of power. And if you look and you get into studying like Anthony Sutton, for example, he lays it all out, absolutely documented during his involvement with the Hoover Institution, in which he showed that it was the bankers of the United States and the UK that financed the founding of the Third Reich, the founding of the Soviet Union, the establishment, the communist Chinese, and all that. The all is a means for being able to develop a powerful relationship to natural resources and financial control, and it just gets so tedious. It's like Catherine Austin Fitts, who, by the way, does study Rudolf Steiner. Catherine Austin Fitts the other day was doing a podcast, and she said when she did an assessment, because she was the under secretary of housing back during Bush, and they tasked her with coming up with what are the assets in the United States, and so she was able to develop a computational model and figure out all of that stuff until she started finding there's big blank spaces in the grid. And so she would get in her car and she would drive there to see, well, what's at this spot that it's not included in the grid. And she'd look and there'd be like some aerospace big factory right there. And it was like not included in the grid. It's like poof. And so you have this disappearing art that has to do with these intelligence operations and all of that. And she said basically, it's extremely expensive to be secretive, extremely. And were we to stop being so secretive and defund some of these operations, we'd all be living the good life. And so, and there you have it. It's that the few want to maintain their control over the many. And so you get these kinds of characters where you have somebody who's making maybe a couple $100,000 a year in the government, and yet they're worth $100 million. It never seems to add up, you know. And so there's all these imbalances. As Novalis, the poet Novalis said, paradise is strewn everywhere. And so you see that this whole fragmented world in which we live and breathe has been compartmentalized in such a way to make it extremely inconvenient for us. But I guess that's the way of karma, isn't it? Somebody once asked, could we talk about karma? Well, isn't that all we ever talk about? I mean, karma means action. It's not just like, okay, well, what kind of bad things are going to happen if you do something? There's that side of it, but there's also the positive side of that. If you learn the lesson, then you quit with the hair shirt and the cat o' nine tails on your own back. It's like at some point I'd like to think that people could reach a level of maturity so that they could come to that understanding. But I think that is more. See, we're in the fifth post-Atlantean period, so it's the mystery of evil. So we're supposed to stare this evil straight in the face. It won't be until the sixth post-Atlantean period, which is quite a ways off. And but in that period, which has to do with the sixth mystery, and the sixth mystery is the mystery of the logos, the mystery of the word, and so that's really maybe at some point we can have a conversation about that because that's quite a deep subject, and given the amount of time we have, I don't know how we could do it any justice. But of course, I tend to frame things in the modality in which I frame things in my own mind, and I tend to use the seven unutterable secrets, as Blavatsky called them, or the seven great mysteries, as they were called by C.G. Harrison, the Rosicrucian Anglican, or Rudolf Steiner called them the seven great mysteries also. And so these are the seven basic themes of the evolutionary scheme. And so the earth is the fourth in the sequence. The fourth mystery is birth and death. The fifth mystery is the mystery of evil. These are recapitulating themes. So that's something that I get into explaining in my books, the Arcana of the Grail Angel and the Arcana of Light on the Path. And it becomes very helpful when you can start to understand these thematic developments and what particularly tools are available to come into a greater relationship with it. And from a ever widening gaze, so to speak, like the Goethe and his friends would use when they would sit there and just look at the rock sitting in the center of the table. It's like, what were they doing? Well, maybe they were waiting. Maybe that they were living within the riddle. And I hope that all we can do here is to just inspire people enough that they might perchance improve their questions. And if we could do a little bit of that, I think that this is all worthwhile, that we're doing this. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying it thoroughly myself, because it never ceases to amaze me that no matter what subject I bring up, it seems as though Reverend David already has an opinion or a story that relates to it. So it makes it easier for me, that's for sure, because if I was just here by myself, I don't even think I could listen to it. But that being said, I'm happy today, and I hope to be even happier as we get to next month. And somebody's saying, I'll eternally be grateful for the teachings of AIM people. That's American Intelligence Media. Changes my life for the better every day. Not even sure how I found them 3 years ago. But thank you, angels. Well, you have to thank the ever diligent Betsy Ross. Is her pseudonym. That's Tyler Gabriel Douglas, and Tyler Gabriel. He's Thomas Pain in the Ass of the Globalists, and the two of them. I don't know how to describe it, but they work so hard, and they've gone to such trouble, and all of that for free. They don't charge. The books are available, and you can get them for free. You can go to get them and download them on your computer for free, and they're just out there and they're just working this, and they've been so diligent, and I've had the good fortune of having Douglas as my best friend for most of my life, and so he's one of the few people that I can talk to that seems to understand most of the things I say, and so that's a good thing. We want to cultivate friendships, but in the main token here. We are very, very appreciative of all the people that are out there. And keep in mind, there may be a period of 10 days or so of darkness to where it appears as if the internet is gone askew or whatever, that there may be some clarification that comes afterwards. But ultimately, there's great changes, again, as we move into the truth of what's going on in current events rather than a continuation of the falsehoods. And so it can prove to be a very, very good thing. This is something that's been planned on for a long, long time, going all the way back to before JFK. And so let's hope that it comes to a peaceful resolution and that we can continue to wage peace on the world. And so in light of that, it's been my habit here to ask David to consecrate our efforts with a prayer. And but first, I want to mention that if you want to buy us a cup of coffee or a cup of Joe, as they say here in the U.S., mine is paypal.me/John Barnwell 888, and for David, it's paypal.me/DPARRY 777. And so that's muchly appreciated. And I'm sure David has a few more diatribes he's going to come up with before he consecrates it all with a prayer.
You see, you're getting to know me. You're getting to know me. First of all, I remember the words of John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress, one of my favourite Puritans. Be of good cheer, for all is well. And I think we've got to remember that. After all, Christ was victorious 2,000 years ago. The battle is won. All of this is mopping up. Secondly, oh God, my Congregationalist roots are reasserting themselves. I might have a lot to say about that and to share with my good friend, you, John, and our viewers, our listeners later on in the month. Certainly, do you know what's haunting me at the minute? The Bible Belt will never get over this. The works of Calvin are actually haunting me at the moment. Oh my God, aren't they so well reasoned? Aren't they incredible? I think there's a huge mysticism which people are really ignoring in the works of Calvin. And, you know, yep.
If I might make a comment, Rudolf Steiner once said that the fatalism of Calvin is true for certain people.
Well, yeah, you know, as usual, you know, Steiner he's got that oomph. I think there's so much to Calvin. I remember going around years back saying you can't have a queer Puritan, but I'm not so sure now. I mean, you know, there are so many permutations in this world. Oh yeah, I think that we're talking. I think this show has been coloured by the unprecedented events in America, and which is roughly what I was expecting. I feel like a mere foreigner stood at the side. So all I can say is my love and my prayers are to everybody over there, and I just hope it doesn't come to too much harm. I mean, you know, you never know what the press is saying here, how accurate it is. But I really hope resolution can be found to everyone's benefit. Let me round off the show. Certainly, Calvin talks about predestination. Maybe it's unwise to jump at what a mind as fine as that is saying too quickly. I suspect there are all sorts of depths and mystical inklings in that strange and somewhat paradoxical doctrine. But we've also got to remember, for every act of predestination, there's also free will. And if we're not choosing to find the light in our hearts and our minds at every moment of every day, then it's only ourselves that we've let down, nobody else. Let's remember that our shadow can poison and darken a day, but our light can turn into a raging fire, whereby everyone else is warmed and made better. Let's pray to become those candles and those raging fires and those torches and those lights and those lanterns and those sparkling spectacles that lead us into the future. Let's see and let light shine upon all of the darkness and dispel its power once and for all. May this happen in the name of Christ Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you once again for sharing your afternoon. What it's like late afternoon there in the UK. It's early afternoon here in the US. And I want to thank everybody for coming on board. And given unforeseen events, I assume we'll be back again next Sunday. But if there is a period of internet darkness in between now and then, know that we're with you in spirit, and in hopes that we can all find that which brings us to the universally human. So bless you all and goodbye.